In this video, we're going to learn how to pot up all these pepper plants to overwinter this winter here in Destin, Florida, all while eating a jalapeno. Hi, I'm Bowtie Dave. Oh, that is such a good jalapeno. Good flavor. Tasty. Got a little bit of red on it. Woo! Yeah, I don't know about the jalapeno. I might go find a green one and eat that instead while we're doing this. Now, this video is going to be not longer than we need to show how to overwinter these pepper plants. I've got about a dozen over here. You can see that far bed over there. Woo, that's a hot pepper. We have a whole bunch more pepper plants. The interesting thing is, now these have been overwintered last winter. Those way over there, they're 2 to 3 years old, some of them, and they've never been overwintered. So what I need to do is I need to get them out of there and overwinter them so I can add to the bed this year because the soil has gone down so far. Ooh, yeah, that makes me talk faster. Maybe I need to eat more of these before garden tours. Hey, yeah, I'm Bowtie David. I've been gardening for about 5 years. Actually, I've been gardening off and on my whole life, but successfully for about 5 years. These are the Bowtie gardens, and I enjoy hot peppers sometimes. Right now, not so much. That was a silly stunt to pull right at the beginning. I'm going to be feeling that the rest of the time. No, seriously, overwintering peppers is something that's not very hard to do. Last year I had 100% success. 3 years ago when I did it, I had almost a 0% success except for 2 little pups that popped up on my tie hot. In fact, these are the 2 pups right here that popped up 3 years ago. So I was very happy to have those come again and show up. This is their, maybe, are they going to be 4 years old this next year or this year? Wow, that would be amazing. Anyway, all these pepper plants I want to pull out because we're about to get cold. We're starting to get cold right now. We started off this morning at 67 degrees Fahrenheit. And it's just going down and down and down. And tomorrow morning, we may be having a freeze. Woo! That's a hot jalapeno. And I've ate some hot stuff, but that's really... Of course, it's all the air I'm trying to suck in while I'm talking, so maybe I'm just talking too much. Let's get right on with how to overwinter pepper plants. Chili plants for those of you in the UK. So folks, there's a lot of argument going around right now. Not really argument, a lot of discussion, and I hear so many people say gardening can be so expensive. And folks, I'm here to tell you, gardening doesn't have to be expensive. It really, really doesn't, and it can be just so much cheaper than some people make it out to be. Now, I will tell you, you can make this as expensive as you want it to be. If you want to go spend a lot of money, $50 a bag on potting soil, and you have the funds to do it, I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just trying to let you know that anyone, regardless of what their income is, regardless of whether they have land or not, regardless of anything, anyone can garden and grow their own food. And I think that's so important in a time that we are in where the food system, I don't know if I would call it broken. It's just not as good as it could be, which is just a symptom of greater problems, but that's not a bad thing necessarily. It's just something to encourage you to grow something healthy, to grow something organic, to grow something that is real food. And so many times I hear gardeners, especially new gardeners, they try that first tomato that they've grown, or cucumber, or pepper, or whatever. Okay, I gotta get another bite. Slowing down there a little bit. Pepper, whatever they grow, and oh, it tastes so much better. That was my experience too. So many years ago, and they is still spicy. Oh my goodness. Peppers, if you haven't grown peppers yet, the longer you leave them on the vine, on the plant, the hotter they get. So when they're green, like that right there, kind of a greenish yellow, they're not as hot as these ones that have been on here a long time, like these bright yellow Tabascos. These are going to be quite a bit hotter. Same is true of any of the peppers. Now this is a Fatalii pepper, and you see some of the, like this one here is green. I could probably stand this as a really hot pepper. This one here is partially, I'm not sure I could do that and still talk. This one over here is just bright yellow. Not gonna touch it. Whew, I will stick those in a Ziploc bag and freeze them because they make great hot sauce. All of these do. I love my peppers. We have so many phenomenal peppers that I grow that just make good tasting hot sauce. So many of my friends that I've given some of my hot sauce to have just raved about the flavor. And so I think it's just amazing as well. Good tasting peppers. It's hard to find good tasting peppers at the grocery store. You gotta grow it yourself. And it doesn't matter if you're in an apartment and just have a little window, a bright window you can stick it in. Here's the cool thing. Even if you don't have a bright window, if you're living in a box with no windows, but you can plug in a grow light or two or three or a few, you can grow things yourself. Might take a little tweaking over time, but you can do it. So many of the YouTubers out there. In fact, I was talking to Gardner Scott. I was watching Gardner Scott's live stream today, and it was awesome. Go back and look at the one about how much does gardening really cost. Today is January 6th of 2025. Good. It was a good session. If you can get the chat to come up on your the chat replay to come up on your computer, I encourage you to do that. A lot of good information in there. Gardner Scott's a great resource. I've been following him almost from the beginning. There's only about 2 other YouTubers that I started following before Gardner Scott. And if you watch any of my videos, you'll hear their names frequently anyway. But these pepper plants, now here's the thing. Gardeners, especially you new gardeners, we think that so many plants, it's going to live 1 year and it's going to die. Not these pepper plants are perennial. Did you know they can live 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years or more, some of them, and they'll continue to produce. If we can overwinter this, basically we're going to take the core of that plant. I have a Florida room in here that I can put my plants into, and they do okay in there. They get cold, but that's okay. You want them a little bit dormant. But we can save the core of this plant and kind of baby it through winter. And in the spring when we plant it, it's just going to be that much farther ahead to make us start next year. Now, another thing you can do, and I did this last winter, is you can actually just cover these. This particular bed, I had a big, well, it wasn't that big. It was just 4 feet tall, 4 foot wide arch that I put plastic over, heavy gauge plastic, and covered these over all winter, and it froze. We had freezing temperatures, and they lived. Most of them lived. There's only a couple of pepper plants in here that are new this year, but most of these, like I know this Tabasco has been here for 2 years now. This Fatalii, it's one of the first ones I put in here way back in July of 2022. This is January of 2025, folks. That's over 2.5 years. Some of these others in here are that old. And so one of the things I'm doing here, the reason I'm doing this is because the soil in this bed is very low. Now when I first built these back in 2021, when I first built these beds, I had filled them up. I filled them up again before I put these July 2022 plants in here. But ever since then, for a year and a half, over a year and a half, that's still burning in my mouth. This soil has been sinking, and I tell you, the reason why is because I plant in mostly compost. That's organic material that continues to break down. As it breaks down, it gets lower and lower and lower. Now, if I didn't have an truly endless source of organic material to put in here, I would be more aggressive in putting actual dirt in here, things with structure for the biome, all the living things in the soil. I would be putting more stuff. I have a limitless supply right now of compost, of mostly organic material, so I'm using that. It's full of nutrients. It's great stuff. It's got some challenges, yeah, but it's what I've got, and it's free. So use what you have. Find the things you have. And so, but we need to take these things to a place where they will be healthy and they can stand being overwinter. So, We're talking about this Fatalii plant right here, Fatalii, F-A-T-A-L-I. It's a beautiful pepper, very hot. I want to say 150 to 350 on the Scoville scale. Just as reference, a jalapeno, that jalapeno I ate is probably about 5 to 8,000 Scoville. It's pretty hot. This is 150 to 350,000 Scoville. They're pretty hot. Yeah, I've eaten these. There's a video. Anyway, so now some of my pepper plants don't make it. Like, I know that there was a, look at this. I just lifted this out. This was, I believe, a Scotch bonnet pepper at one point. Last year, this gave me a whole bunch of Scotch bonnet peppers. Another nice hot pepper. It's a Scotch bonnet Jamaican yellow, and the commenter that talked about that, I got to be more specific on that. You're right, they are a Jamaican yellow. The calyx may look different from whatever the original Scotch bonnet is crossed with. I don't know that much about the identity of plants, but yeah, it comes as a Scotch bonnet Jamaican yellow pepper chili from, I know that's what Baker Creek calls them. Seed Saver Exchange just calls them Scotch bonnet yellow. So they're delicious. I like them. They make a phenomenal flavor to any hot dish. Of course, Tabasco. Well, we're going to get around to a few of these. I just want to show getting these ready for overwintering, and it doesn't take a whole lot of tools. Again, it's not very expensive. Folks, this is an old pair of hand trimmers that I bought at my local Ace Hardware. They're Ace Hardware brand. I've been using these for a year. Yes, they need to get cleaned. I need to focus on that here pretty soon. But we're going to use these to get this plant to a point to fit inside one of my saved nursery pots. And I have, you saw in the very beginning, I've got a pile of these. And this is right here why I have such a pile of these. And so basically we're going to get this plant down to a very basic shape. And the basic shape, I want you to just imagine here, see if I can draw a diagram here. You got a stem coming up that forks off, and each one of those forks off. That's the core of the plant. That's all you need. No extra leaves, no leaves in fact. Just the main stem, the break off, and 2 Ys on each one. That's ideal. Now beyond those 2 Ys, you want 1 leaf node. Now let me show you right here up close. Here is a Y in one of these plants, the fork in the branch, and then right up here you can see the extra leaf node. Now I'm going to leave at least one of these leaf nodes on every single one of these 4. It's going to leave those 4 tips. Every single one of these 4 tips needs to have at least 1 leaf node. And there's other leaf nodes down here too, and they're going to bloom. And one of these is going to, one of the little leaf nodes underneath the first fork may put out a branch next year, or may make another whole nother part of the plant. And so that's okay. That's the way they're supposed to do. But let's get a little closer here and watch what I do to get this Fatalii plant. Now, not the Tabasco. We'll do that in just a second. The Fatalii is what we're focusing on. We want to get this Fatalii plant ready to fit. And it's really quite funny in one of these little pots. I have trimmers, and you'll notice behind me I have my wife's father, my father-in-law, used to call this a sharpshooter. He was a plumber, and he always called this the sharpshooter shovel. So I like this shovel. It's one I've used a lot, especially when I helped him. It does great for this because you'll notice it's almost got the round of the pot that we're going to be fitting in. And so I can make a circle about that big out of the roots of this plant and make it fit in here easily. And folks, I'm all about easy. Just make it easy for me. If it's easy, I'll figure it out. Let's get closer. Now folks, I want to start on this Fatalii pepper here that we were just looking at. You'll notice there are a couple of dead branches down here. These dead branches are what I trimmed it down to last year. And this thing created all new branches for this year. These plants will take care of themselves. So ultimately we'll be removing these dead parts, but I'm looking here and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 branches here that are producing Fatalii peppers. And I'm hoping you can see this, but we don't need 4 branches. Remember, I said we only need to come up one branch, one main trunk, a single fork, and a fork on the end of each of those. Now, what I'm going to do here is, as I'm cleaning out some of this grass, because I have grass in my beds, it's okay. It all grows together. It's all meant to grow together. I'm looking here, and so I'm seeing right here, there is a great branch right here that's coming up from the base of this, and I really like this one here. It's nice and thick. This one here is a little thinner. I'm looking out off camera to the edges, and they look to be pretty much the same. These two are real thin. It's not going to be either this one or this one, but this one here seems very strong. So right now, I'm pretty sure it's going to be this trunk that we're going to keep, but I want to trim both of these trunks, and after we get it out, we'll see which one of these 2 larger ones looks better. So right now, I'm going to follow this, and here's the fork. Here's the second fork. There's a leaf node right here. In fact, you can see there's a little branch. Now, we really don't need that branch. We can just cut it off. And you'll see there's another leaf node right here. This leaf node, you can actually see a new leaf coming off of it. And so all we're going to do here is we're going to simply cut it just a little bit above each of those leaf nodes. So right here, and right here. That looks beautiful. This is the main branch. Okay, that's the second fork, number 1. There's a leaf node. I'm going to cut it right above that. And now this leaf node has a deadish branch on it, but it still has a leaf node here. I'm going to opt to leave this next leaf node on here just for the fun of it. I don't normally leave 2 leaf nodes. We'll cut it right there. However, you see the leaves on here? We're not going to need those. Remember, I said no leaves. Leaves are not going to be left. This one here, I know we're going to be cutting off completely, so I'm going to take that right now to get it out of the way. This one here, I don't know which one of these branches I want to take yet. I want to see the base of this thing. So here's the second fork on this side. A couple of leaf nodes. Here's the second fork on this side. A couple of leaf nodes. This branch here I am not going to keep. Boy, that looks a lot less than what it did a few minutes ago, doesn't it? Pull back the irrigation here, pull back a few of the leaves. This is underneath a magnolia tree. Lots of big, thick leaves all over here. All right, now I'm going to take the sharpshooter and I'm going to go straight down next to this thing in just about the size of one of these pots that I was showing you earlier. And it looks traumatic, and folks, it is traumatic. We're going to be forcing this plant to go into a state of dormancy. And dormancy is good. Many plants actually require dormancy in the winter to survive, to live. So here's the pot that I'm talking about. I hope you can see this in the shadow. We're going to do another one a little more in the sun here next. But I'm pulling this thing. I'm breaking roots. But see there, folks? See all those roots? That's plenty of roots. I'm going to get some of this dirt that it's been in because it's used to this dirt. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about controlling weeds over winter here. So don't panic if I'm not doing it the way your favorite YouTuber does it, okay? Folks, there's so many YouTubers out there that'll say there's so many ways to do it, and there's so many YouTubers that will say there's only one way to do it. Well, folks, there are so many ways to do it. And there are so many right ways to do it. God made these plants want to grow. God made these plants want to feed you, to sustain you. And that's what they will do. And so we're going to take this, and you'll see I'm kind of packing it in here. Now, these got watered just this morning. It rained on this soil. There is a lot of sand in this soil, so that's okay too. It's going to have good drainage. Not as much as maybe optimal, but it's going to have a lot of good drainage in here, and we are going to overwinter that. Now, one of the things that you're going to hear YouTubers talk about is pull that thing, rinse off the dirt, put it in new soil, and you can do that. But folks, if you're just putting in this, the reason why they say that, there's two things that are in here, three things actually. Number one, there's bugs in there. Yes, there are bugs in there. There's supposed to be bugs. There's biome. There's living things in here. Those living things have to be in there for this plant to thrive the way we want it to. Second thing, there's disease in there. Yes, there is disease in there. And you know what? We're going to put that in a state of dormancy, and it's going to come back, and through a balance of biome with the viruses and the bacteria and the bugs and everything else in here, this plant can still thrive. Now, this is never a 100% solution, folks. You might lose some of these. Like 3 years ago, when we lost everything except for one, my tie hot just gave its last to put out 2 pups. That was amazing. But yeah, so there's stuff in here. The other thing that's in here, folks, is weed seeds and weed roots and weed tubers. And yes, we might get weeds in this thing, and that's okay too. That's part of life. We want to learn how to live in harmony with the nature that's in here. So let's take this over to the table where we can get a better look at this. Okay, so here is our plant. We've got our soil kind of pushed down in here to make it very little room for air in the soil. We want it to kind of be packed. The first time we water this is going to settle that soil down even more. We're going to do more for this in just a little bit. First thing I always wanted to do, I did not do this last year, and I regretted it because I didn't know what all these plants were until they actually produced peppers. So I know this is a Fatalii. Oh, looky here. This says Scotch Bonnet Yellow. Oh, that's an old Scotch Bonnet Yellow label, but it does say July 22nd, 2022. Yeah, that's when this was planted as well. So we're going to say Fatalii. July 22nd, 2022. Yeah, that's all we really need. And I'm going to stick this tag in here. Now this comes from the Blue Diamond almond milk. This plastic on this container is UV protected. I don't know if it's UV proof, but this thing has been out in the sun for 2.5, 3 years. Florida's hot sun, and it is still in good shape. It is still flexible. It's still good stuff. I like these jugs. They're free because I use the almond milk that comes in this for my lunchtime cereal every day, and I just cut them up. Free, folks, free. I like free. So I'm gonna stick that in there. We're gonna look at this real quick because number one, we said, okay, there's this main trunk here, looks kind of miserable. This, I happen to know, is what we started with this past year. This is January of 25. Back in April, March, February of 24, we started. This was the beginning plant. Well, it grew something else out of the base down here. And we don't want a whole lot in here. This is the first one I cut off completely. We don't want a whole lot in here because this root system, which is now less than half the size that it was when it was sitting in the soil over there, can't support that much plant. If we'd left everything on here, it would have died because this root system can't support all that. There's not enough nutrients in this root system, in this dirt, to support all that. But we can support a much smaller plant. So now we're down to, we got rid of those 2 small branches right there. Boy, I hope you can hear it in this wind. It's a little breezy. The polar vortex that came across the country all the way down to the Caribbean, it's literally right there. So we're battling it right now. So anyway, I'm going to cut off these 2 dead pieces right here, which they look like they come into one single trunk. And I want to try to do this. I'm not sure how I can do this successfully. I don't want to damage the existing branches. I almost need loppers for this, don't I? I don't really want to let it crack. I don't want to break it because that's going to be even more trauma to the plant. There's one. Oh, this is going to be hard. Oof. see if I can get down in here. Get this properly first. Oh, so these branches, they are dead. Oh, whoop, not that one. This one. These branches are dead. They're doing the plant no good at all. They're not doing the plant any good. So we really don't need these. Toss them. They're in the bed now. They're going to be fertilizer for next year. Okay, so we're getting closer. We're getting closer. Okay, so now I can look here and I can see, did I damage that branch? I really, I put a bruise on this branch. It still looks really good. I do like the look of these branches. There's one skinny one, but there's 3 skinny ones over on this one. So I'm going to keep this main branch right here. Now, I know it's off center. I'm not going to worry about that now. When it comes time to plant this back in the ground in a few months, I will be planting this thing at an angle, so this thing is pointing straight up. Now remember, the old branches, they just died off. This might die off and might shoot 2 new branches down here. I'm not sure. We'll just have to see what the plant decides it wants to do. And yes, the plant can decide. It's smart. It knows. It wants to live, folks. God created it that way. And so I am looking at cutting this side one right here. You can see there's one in the middle, there's one on the side. So I'm looking at cutting this side one over here, and we're going to keep the main branch that I was hoping we'd be able to keep. And so we're down to our first overwintered plant. Now there's one more thing we're going to do with this. Let me show you real quick. Okay folks, cheapskate back. This right, we live at the beach. We literally live 7 blocks from the beach in that direction. We live about 7 blocks from the bay, the Choctawhatchee Bay, in that direction. So we live on sand. Our ground is 100% sand as far as down as you can dig. Trust me, I've dug pretty deep. It's all sand. And so I'm able to actually have a little pile of sand over by the compost bin that I don't really show on my garden tours. But there's a pile of sand over there that I kind of nurse. I use off it. Sometimes I add sand to it when I'm doing jobs or whatnot. But I have sand. Now, part of keeping your gardening cheap is to use what you have. Look around, see what you have. I'm going to be mulching with sand. I'm going to mulch this thing with sand. Okay, you can mulch with sand. Now, if you live up in the mountains and you don't have any sand and you're not sure you have enough money to go buy a bag of play sand, don't even sweat it. There's so many different ways you can mulch this, and other YouTubers will tell you different ways to do what I'm about to do here. Some of them will tell you to pull the plant out, rinse off the roots, get all the dirt off, put fresh new dirt in there. It's up to you. You do it your way. But for me, my cheapskate brain of mine, I want to do this as cheaply as possible, and so I am going to mulch with sand. Now mulching, what is mulching? Mulching is putting a layer over here that will maintain temperature, that will maintain moisture, that will protect from additional weed growth, that will protect from insects developing. Some insect eggs will develop because they've got oxygen. If they're buried deep in the ground, they won't develop and they'll just stay dormant, which is kind of what we want. So I've got this sand in here packed in. Ends up being maybe 3/4 of an inch of sand when all is said and done. I don't know. I'm not that scientific about it. I'm a handyman, folks. I'm just kind of figuring these things out as I go. I've been doing this for a number of years now, and had a lot of success last year. I was very excited. But anyway, so I'm going to mulch this with sand, and that's going to do all the benefits that we need. Now, some people say, oh, put sand out there and keep the slugs away and the snails away. It doesn't work. I got as many slugs and snails in my sandy beds as I do in my non-sandy beds. So slugs will crawl on this. In fact, it's so funny because the person who said that, I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. So I went out and I actually mulched several of my plants with sand. The very next morning, I was having a bad trouble with slugs that year. The very next morning, there were so many slug trails. I couldn't see anywhere in that area about a foot around where there wasn't a slug trail. They had just crisscrossed that thing all night. And so, yeah, sand doesn't help with slugs. Not in my experience, at least. So, there we go. Now, one thing I have made sure of, every place that I cut off those branches, I've got exposed so they can cure. What I mean is they're going to heal, they're going to kind of harden off the surface here, and some of them might do a kind of a sealing over, a drying off effect, and then hopefully this one will survive. And I'm very excited because these will start growing leaves while it's in dormancy. Do we pull off those leaves? I don't. I don't touch it. If it needs leaves to go, I will give it the leaves. If it's in the garage, in a dark garage, it may not do that. For me, I put it inside a window over here that does get a tiny, tiny bit of afternoon direct sunlight. And they do have a tendency to start developing those leaves. These guys are going to be in the ground for, in this pot for probably 2 months. This is the very beginning of January. End of February, we might be putting these things back out, certainly in March. So now they say our average last frost date, which is, you can Google that, ask what average first frost date and average last frost date for your zip code, your postal code, and Google will tell you, most likely. If Google doesn't, you'll find a site that can do it. But it says my average last frost date is March 15th or something like that. I've never had a frost here. In the 7 years we've lived here, we haven't had a frost after the middle of February. And we've only had a couple of frosts even in February. So normally our frosts come somewhere between the 2nd to the 4th week of January. And that's about it for here on the beach. So we're surrounded by subtropical land all around us. This thing, all it's going to need, in about 3 weeks, I'm going to give it maybe a cup of water. It's going to be it. I'm going to give it a cup of water as soon as I bring it in, but I might water this thing in 2 or 3 weeks. I'll feel it, and if it feels super dry down deep inside there, I might give it a little sooner, but it's not going to need much, folks. You're not watering this, it's dormant. It just needs a little bit of moisture to survive. It doesn't need a lot, and you want it to stay in that dormant state. We're not feeding it, we're not doing anything to it, because once this thing gets into the rich compost that I plant all my garden in, this thing is just going to take off, and it's going to be beautiful. Let's go do another one real quick. Okay, folks, so we're looking here at a Peppadew plant. I don't know if you can see me, I think you can. Peppadew, that's this thing right here. They're not quite as hot as a jalapeno. They're flavorful, great pepper. So I'm looking here at the base of this pepper, and I'm kind of pulling back the weeds a little bit and getting an idea of what it looks like. Back here behind, there is one branch that's off the back here that I guarantee we're not going to use. And you can actually see roots on the surface right here, which when we're done, these roots need to be under at least the sand that we're going to mulch with. Remember, but look, main leader, first fork. Above this first fork, in fact, let me go ahead and chop this out of the way. If you haven't watched my videos, you know I haven't been harvesting a whole lot of peppers this year because, well, we've got a lot of peppers. Now I do want them next year, so that's why I'm babying these things and making sure they're going to survive. So we are taking care of them. Now I do have a cheap little cage around here, what they call a tomato cage. It's one of the cheap flimsy ones. They're great for pepper plants. This thing got away from it a little bit, so it kind of pulled it over at one point. We had some pretty big winds. It's okay, it's okay. That's one of the reasons why these roots pulled out on this side. But, so we come up from the ground, we come up to this first fork. So remember, on each of these, we want one fork past the first fork. So we come up here, there's the next fork right there. You can still see it. I'm doing this quickly because we're about to lose our sun behind a big old oak tree here in the afternoon. So, number one, leaves, we don't need them. One extra little branch right there, we don't need it. Now we got one growth node here, and there's actually a good looking branch back here, but just for the fun of it, I'm actually going to go up here and keep this growth node as well. So come up a little past it there and a little past it right there. So we just took out a big old hunk of that plant, which is going to give us some relief after we put it in that tiny pot. So again, first fork, each side. Now this right here is actually a really good looking leaf node. So I'm just going to keep it right to here. Oh boy, I want to balance it. This thing looks really good too. I'm going to go ahead and keep 2 of them just because I like how it looks. This is so strong. I have a feeling this is going to be a strong producer of branches when we put this in the spring, if this survives. Now the other side here, it doesn't fork until way up here. And so there's one actually little branch here in the fork, which we don't need. Comes up here, and there's way up here us 2 more leaf nodes. And I'm going to just leave just past, about ½ an inch past each of these leaf nodes, these forks. And that thing is done. Same basic shape. First fork, 2 second forks. 1 leaf node left. Well, I know, I broke the rule. I left an extra leaf node here, and Scott Head, you can fuss at me later, but yeah, so that plant is ready to go. The cool thing is now I can just lift this cage right off of there. Okay, so I'm cutting this thing about the size of the pot, and I push the shovel down in, and yes, we're cutting roots, folks. It's fine. We're cutting roots. We don't want it to support all that root, suffer with it all winter while we've got it stored. We don't need much of this root left. I cut off a little bit there, and I'm going to shove this thing down into the pot. This is called root pruning. This is going to be one happy plant. Another reason why I like to use the soil that it's been in down here, if it's not going to survive the soil that it's lived in for a whole year, it doesn't need to live. And it's going to decide on its own that it's time for it to give up and move on and make space for something else. That's just the way nature is. That's just the way God made it. One more happy pepper plant. Ready to go all winter. So I'm clipping right along here, getting these peppers, chilies out of the ground. And I wanted to show this real quick. This is a lot of roots exposed. I haven't done anything to this yet. The soil level is here. There were weeds growing up around this. So I'm going to actually go ahead and bury all these roots right up to that crown, which is where it gets wide right there, in soil and sand when I overwinter this, and it should be okay. It was a very prolific plant just now when I trimmed it back. So a few of these peppers came out looking kind of like this, and I wasn't sure what to do with them. So I left more than I know. I need to trim that one off right there. It's definitely gone, or you can tell. Look, it's hollow stem right there. But yeah, more than I know I should leave. We're gonna see how this does. These things, folks, they want to grow. Give them a chance. So I'm coming down to the very end here. Got a few more, 3 more in there. Found some interesting things. Got my big peri, my huge peri. You remember in the garden tour, the end of the pepper bed and bed number 2. I can show a little snippet of that here. But yeah, this is my big, huge peri. I can't believe I did that to my pride and joy. Ha! Scares me a little bit, but we'll see. Yeah, this one here, this is a cayenne, dragon cayenne, and I'm a little confused, as I am on some of these. I've been a little confused on a few on what to do. This thing here has kind of become an understory plant, which is why it's grown so thick leaves through here. But it comes up here to this split. It's 1 fork into 4 branches, and that seems like a lot, but I'm going to kind of stick with my rule of thumb, I'm going to go just each one of these 4 branches to the next leaf node, like so. And really, a lot of times you just kind of have to start pulling off leaves to see what's underneath there. But there it is. Another thing of not so beauty, right? But yeah, you kind of have to just, you know, wing it sometimes. It's where it lands. It is what it is, right? And as with all these others, this is number 21. I'm putting in, mulching some sand, composting the cuttings. And so there we go. 24 pepper plants ready to be overwintered in the Florida room. I'm going to water these in just a little bit, let them drain some, and we'll be moving them into the Florida room right there. There's a big table down yonder that I can set them on, and they will be good there for the next 2 months. And we will be back in the garden. It's been interesting. Some of these are more textbook than others. Some of these look a little bit ugly. We'll have to see. How they do for the winter. I kind of had to make some choices on some of them, and we got a little bit of harvest here. You can see I got a whole bunch of jalapenos that we're going to add to the freezer bag after I weigh them, of course. But I'm very happy. I've never overwintered so many pepper plants. The thing I'm most happy about is that the bed down there in bed number 3, where all the peppers have been for years, since 2022, that's 2 full winters. This is the 3rd winter for some of these down on this end. I get to finally top off that bed this year and get more compost in there so that we'll be ready to grow for another year or 2. The soil is down, I don't know, 18 inches. It's down a lot. No, maybe not 18 inches, but certainly 16 inches from where it started many years ago, many moons ago. So, and of course the bed right behind you, you'll have to see in the next raised garden bed tour for January, is empty of hot peppers. The ones that were in bed number 2 were the ones that were all successfully overwintered last year for the first time in my life. I was so very excited to have finally had success overwintering peppers last year, and I'm looking forward to some more success this year. We weren't careful with them, folks. I chopped off roots, I chopped off branches, I pulled off everything, left them looking like sticks sticking out of the sand. That's it. And we'll have to see how these do. Stick around, subscribe so you can see the outcome on this, because we'll be planting these out. I'm predicting early March, maybe mid-March at the latest. So they will start looking for heat and their leaves will start coming out. I will be watering these lightly about every 3 weeks until then. So they won't get a lot of TLC between now and then. They're going to go in there and just kind of do their thing. If you've had success overwintering and doing this, or if you have any questions, share your experiences, ask your questions down in the comments below. I so enjoy hearing from all of y'all, and those of you who have subscribed, you know I appreciate you so much for helping to make Bowtie life what it is today. We're getting there. We're growing, folks. Y'all have a blessed day.